This is Wraith from Wraith Rain. I'm an author of serialized gay romance fiction. Every week on this podcast, I'll be reading a chapter from one of my gay fantasy shifter serials called Dragon's Reign. I'll explain at the break how you can find out more about this story and others I write. So let's get to it. Chapter 69. Territory. "What do you suppose they're talking about, Valerius and Marban?" Caden asked Rose. She was tense as a bow beside him. "You think Valerius is saying anything? I'm wondering if I'll have a grandfather left after Valerius shreds him or uses that hellfire on him that you told me about." They were standing together on Esme's balcony, with Esme and Tez seated at one of the garden tables a little down from them. Kayla was on the other side, leaning over the balcony railing so far that her bare feet had left the ground. "They are too far away to hear." Kayla was leaning over the railing and craning her neck. "Can't see them either." "They are in the throne room, dear. Valerius is impressing upon Marban the full weight of his kingship," Esme answered as she continued her scan of Sarai's electronic communications, still searching for the conspirators behind the bombings. "But knowing Valerius's feelings about Marban, I am certain the subject of death, throttling, burning to its crisp, and the like came up." "I know!" Kayla was kicking her feet, rather like she was treading water, but instead was treading only air as she tried to somehow see the throne room. Caden resisted the urge to pull her back. If she fell off, she'd just shift into her dragon form. But still, he felt a little sick watching her teeter. "That's why I want to hear and see. I'm betting it is an epic beatdown." "He is a swarm shifter. Wasps, I believe. Is it wasps, Rose?" She nodded, biting her lower lip until it nearly bled. "Well then, it cannot be much of an epic beatdown. One breath of fire and the insects would be instantly destroyed," Esme said coolly as she swiped and read. Rose's chin rose up. "Swarm shifters aren't without the ability to fight." "She didn't mean it like that, flower girl," Kayla said, still teetering. "Even I have heard of this Marban out of the water. He is sly and clever, and there are more ways to fight than physically, which is a good thing because few creatures can stand before a dragon and survive." Rose swallowed and went pale, even though Kayla was complimenting Marban. She balled one hand and brought it down on the railing. "I shouldn't have said anything to Marban. If I just stayed quiet, none of this would have happened." "You are not responsible for any of this, Rose. Stop beating yourself up," Caden told her. He reached over and covered her bald hand with his in the balcony railing. "But I am responsible, Caden. Marban wouldn't have known anything about our plan, but for me. But she looked so miserable that his heart hurt, and Iolaire twittered softly. "I told him because I thought he would be, oh God, proud of me. That since he was being civic-minded himself, that he would see that I was trying to improve things for the below. But I forgot." Her mouth twisted like she was tasting something sour. "He's only in this for himself. Unless he can take advantage of it, it doesn't matter." Caden tended to agree with her. "Yeah, that's what I think about Marban too. But just because he wants in on it doesn't mean it's a bad idea. In fact, him wanting to be a part of this means it's a great idea." Her wrenched expression softened a little. "I suppose it does. Marban doesn't try to take ownership of bad plans." "No, I bet he doesn't." Caden grinned at her. She bit her lower lip, though. "Yeah, okay, so maybe the plan is good, and Marban wanting to get in on it isn't absolutely terrible, but Valerius finding out this way." Caden scrubbed the back of his neck with his right hand. "He will get over it, eventually. Maybe in a millennia." "Oh, Caden, I'm so sorry," Rose cried. "Don't worry, it will be all right." Caden hoped that as much as believed it. Maybe hoped a little more than he believed. Tez, who was fishing out the grapes from a cup of fruit cocktail, and Caden wondered where he'd gotten that, answered, "He should not be angry at you at all, Caden. You are both trying to help the least powerful of us. That is a noble endeavor. More of our kind should do so." "You said should not, Tez, which means you think he will be," Caden pointed out. Tez, after chewing a grape contemplatively, answered, "Yes, because Valerius is not a man of the people. It's not that he doesn't like poor people and prefer rich people." No, he is not fond of people in general, Caden agreed with him. So he's an equal opportunity disliker. Exactly. Tez fished out another grape. He gazed at it almost lovingly, then popped it in his mouth. That is why you will have to bear some of his wrath, Caden. You like people and want to be out among them. He thinks they are nothing but trouble. People are trouble, Kayla turned from surveying the city, but that's what makes them fun. I think your idea to appear in the below is a good one, and you should do it. I think Valerius may have something to say about that. Esme looked over the top of her tablet at Kayla with a small smile. Kayla put her hands at her hips and scowled at the blue dragon shifter. Is Caden not a dragon shifter? Of course, dear, Esme answered. So he is our equal, yes? Kayla pressed. Our equal? Yes, he is, of course. Esme smiled faintly. It was a smile that said Kayla was walking straight into her trap. Then Caden can go and meet the people if he wants to. Kayla smacked her right hand down on Caden's left shoulder. Ah, but you have forgotten one thing. Caden could almost hear Esme's trap snapping shut as the blue dragon shifter said, While Caden is our equal, none of us are Valerius's equal. Both his and Kayla's shoulders slumped as they both realized the import of what she was saying. Rose sighed and shook her head. She is right. Tez sighed. Valerius is the first among equals, though he is usually loath to assert his authority. Not anymore. Or at least not about you, Esme replied. He is very involved. Caden colored. Well, he's protective of me because I'm new. New? He was never like that with you, Tez, when you were new, was he, dear? Esme turned to Tez. Tez looked almost startled. What? No, I believe the first time we met he shouted at me. Tez sniffed. And scowled. It upset Elderon greatly. Caden's lips wanted to twitch into a smile, but he pressed them tightly together so he didn't upset Elderon too. Rose covered a snicker by turning it into a cough. And Kayla, was Valerius protective of you when your spirit bonded with you? Esme asked. Kayla shrugged. I don't remember. It was more important to speak to my dolphin friends than him. So that is a likely no, Esme sighed. Caden's cheeks flamed hotter and he looked at the ground. Maybe he just thinks I need more help than you guys did. Caden! Rose shook her head in faint exasperation. Marban said that the moment he saw the two of you together that there was something more there. Marban said that? Caden's eyes went huge. Anybody who has ever seen the two of you together says that, Rose laughed. I didn't know it was so obvious. Things have just... Caden blushed but pushed out, gotten more serious recently. Other than the dragon fighting, it seems like you guys were pretty tight from the beginning. The night on the bridge, he picked you up and flew off with you, Rose reminded him. That was to get me out of trouble. Caden was scrubbing the back of his neck again, which had also turned bright red, he was sure. Tez seemed fascinated by Caden's blushes. He had abandoned his fruit cocktail, or maybe there were no more grapes, and was sitting on the edge of his seat all agog. Caden, are you and Valerius mates? Caden immediately thought of Iolaire and Raziel, how their heads were nearly touching as if they were inhabiting one body instead of two. Tez, Esme chastened, you do not ask that. Well, how are we to know if we do not ask? Tez challenged her. You need to be told? Kayla looked bewildered. It is better than making assumptions. Tez's voice was high. Kayla rolled her eyes. If you must be told, then you must be quite blind. I would not be asking if I were blind. Tez scowled at her. We haven't discussed it, Caden said quickly, which was true. Do you need to discuss it, dear? Esme gave him a knowing smile. He lowered his head again. It's just starting. Yes, Esme nodded. But I will tell you something. I have never seen Valerius with anyone like he is with you. Tez nodded eagerly too. Yes, he is not romantic. As I said before, Valerius does not like people. But he likes you, dragon puppy. Kayla patted his cheek. I am not a dragon puppy, Caden laughed. You are. Those eyes, Kayla giggled, and you're so cute. I like Valerius too, very much. Very, very much. What he didn't say was that who Iolaire liked was far more important. Caden was along for the ride. That doubt, that niggling doubt, That he was just an accident surfaced again in full force. He felt like an imposter all of a sudden. He was certain that Iolaire and Raziel were mates, but him and Valerius? He knew what his heart said. It said yes. But that was because he wanted it to be true. But mates meant fated and perfect for one another and all of that. Yet how could that be if he wasn't meant to be with Iolaire in the first place? Iolaire tilted its head at him, no comprehension on its face. It twittered at him lovingly. I love you too, Iolaire. But be honest with me. Did you choose me because I was your chance to be with Raziel? Raziel's your mate, I know that. You, Iolaire said. What about me? Caden asked back, amused and not understanding at the same time. I am you. You are me, Iolaire said. Caden's forehead furrowed. Only because I was going to be blown up, you saved me. You saved me. Iolaire mirrored his words. But it was an accident that brought us together, Caden objected. Always meant to be together, always, Iolaire said. Always? You mean you would have found a way to bond with me? Caden asked. Yes, always. Iolaire blinked softly at him like a cat does when saying they love the person they were looking at. Caden, you okay? Rose touched his shoulder. Caden blinked. He felt like he was coming out of deep water. He shook himself and then started to smile. Yeah, I was just talking to Iolaire. The smile grew so broad that his cheeks hurt. Iolaire flapped its wings happily. Okay. Rose laughed uncertainly at his sudden, brilliant, beaming happiness. I was just, I don't know, doubting myself, he told her, and then glanced around at the other dragon shifters. Meeting you guys has been amazing, but it's also been daunting. I thought maybe Iolaire made a mistake by choosing me. Or it was an accident, or just a convenience because I was there. Oh my goodness, Caden. Esme looked so sad at him. That's not how this works. Spirits have one person that they are meant for. The moment we come together with them is when we are ready. But the mate thing, doesn't that complicate things? Caden's cheeks, which had been red before, were now nuclear in heat and color. They didn't know about how Iolaire and Raziel were now able to be seen together, as if they occupied one body instead of two. There was only a thin line separating them. I mean, it's not just me and Valerius in this, but Iolaire and Raziel. Truly? Your dragons are mates too? Tez's mouth was open. Esme looked at him quizzically. Tez, dear, why wouldn't their dragons be involved in this mating business? Humans don't have fated mates. Tez flushed. Well, Eldaron is rather particular about the idea of sex. You and your dragon talk about sex? Rose interrupted. Well, Eldaron is very beautiful, so it has many suitors. Tez sniffed and rubbed the fingernails of his right hand against the front of his shirt. But you came here to court Caden, Rose pointed out. Tez blinked rapidly. I came to show off Eldaron's loveliness and my considerable charms. You are both wonderful, Caden said kindly. But like in everything else, Valerius is the first among equals. Esme twinkled at him. If you are Valerius's mate, then you must show him you are his equal. Kayla stomped her foot. How would I do that? Caden tilted his head to the side, knowing already that Kayla got into trouble even more than he did. By having your time with the people. We will go now. Kayla grabbed Caden's right wrist and Rose's left wrist and started to drag them towards the front doors of Esme's suites. We will convince Valerius that you can do as you like. The moment Esme's guards, though, opened the door, they were unable to go forward because Alarian was standing there. He wore a tailored blue serge suit with icy white shirt flared open at the collar. His hands were slid negligently into his pants pockets, and he looked freshly showered. The three of them looked at the one of him. Alarian's eyes narrowed as he took in Rose. They narrowed more as he took in Kayla. I thought I smelled fish earlier, Valerian said to Kayla. And I thought I smelled dung, Kayla answered. I hope you are enjoying Dragon's Reign so far. I've been talking a lot about the membership site I have, but I also do publish individual books under the pen name Ex Aritare, which have the same type of adventurous plot, magic around every corner, and happily ever afters as Dragon's Reign. I have a trilogy, for example, called Cursed, which is a gay, modern retelling of Beauty and the Beast with a tiger shifter. In Cursed, Nick Fairfax vows to do whatever Lord Bane Dunsany desires for 1 year. In exchange, Nick's family gets a chance to regain their fortune. Is this the worst mistake of Nick's life? Or will it lead to a love found only in fairy tales? A link to the Cursed series is in the description down below. What are you doing here, Valerian? Caden found himself asking. I thought for sure you'd have packed your things and be heading home by now. Rose cast a nervous glance at him. Her eyes were slightly wide as she realized who this was. Dragon King Valerian, the Green Dragon, the Poisoner. And here Caden was treating him like he was no one important. Valerian took a moment too long to answer to show Caden's words had affected him, but he then smoothly asked, Why would I do that? I'm not a girl, remember? Caden's voice was tart. Rose's head jerked between them. He thought you were a girl? Why? Evidently, Iolaire is too comely and graceful to be a boy, Caden said without his gaze leaving Valerian's face. You're kidding, right? Rose asked, her voice low as if Valerian couldn't hear her. Unfortunately, no, Caden answered her. So why are you still here, Valerian? There's nothing for you here. There would be nothing for you even if I were a girl, by the way. But we hardly know one another, Valerian said. You've only heard others' opinions of me. Yeah, but what I hear is universally bad, Caden retorted. And the first time I met you, you were flying in Valerius' territory without permission. We had to take you down. Again, there was that stiffness in Valerian's form, which told Caden that he was angry at Caden's words, but pretending not to be. He finally broke that stillness by chuckling uncomfortably. Valerian's smile was more of a rictus. Yes, well, I was just trying to remind Valerius that he is not above us, Valerian said. Funny, as everyone else was just telling me that he is above all of you, the King of Kings, the first among equals. Caden crossed his arms over his chest. Valerian let out a bark of laughter. Ha! Of course they think that. They are sheep. I am not. And I do not think. Valerian's eyes narrowed. I do not think you are either, Caden. So I am not leaving. I am staying to get to know you better. Valerian moved to take Caden's arm and lead him back into Esme's rooms. She had appeared in the threshold of the balcony doors with Tez following after her. Well, we are leaving, Kayla informed Valerian, having remained silent but fuming as Valerian had talked. So you need to get out of our way. Kayla was as tall as Valerian, and the two of them were practically pressed nose to nose in that moment. Valerian's nostrils flared. You are in my way, Kayla. There is nothing that you could want Caden for that is more important than I do. There are no fish here for you to speak to. Kayla's nose wrinkled as if Valerian smelled bad. I think Caden would better like to speak to the fish than to you. Rose tugged his hand. Maybe we should get out of here while the getting's good. Kayla and Valerian had started to circle one another. For a moment, Caden imagined the green dragon and the turquoise dragon in their places. Wings would be flapping angrily, massive mouths open to expose teeth, poisonous smoke billowing from Valerian's jaws, the power of the sea reflected in Kayla's eyes. You might have the right idea, Caden said to Rose as he took a step back towards the open doors. I thought you would want to step in and bring peace, Rose remarked as they both turned and hustled out the doors, leaving Tez and Esme actually urging Kayla and Valerian to fight. No, not really. I figured the more times that Valerian is trounced, the better things are in the world, Caden admitted as they hustled on the hallway. Why, Caden, I thought you were a peaceable dragon, Rose laughed. You sound almost rational with this running away business. He grinned at her. I think Kayla needs to let off some steam. That's probably one of her powers, as she is another water dragon. Seriously, though, we should go talk to Valerius and Marban about what we want to do in the below. Kayla was right about that. But I think she sort of gets on Valerius's nerves. Because she's not impressed with him? Rose smirked. How did you guess that? She doesn't seem impressed by anyone. They hustled down the stairs and headed towards the throne room. Even before they neared the side doors, Caden could hear raised voices coming from inside. He and Rose exchanged worried glances. They slowed just as they came to the side doors. Without speaking, both stopped just out of sight and listened. Caden had expected to hear Valerius's gruff growl, and Marban's calming one. But that was not who was speaking. "King Valerius, I demand to see my son," his father's voice rose up. "Oh my God, Dad?" Caden whispered. "What is he doing here?" Rose shook her head in confusion. They both continued to listen. "It was my understanding that you were the ones not speaking to Caden." Valerius actually sounded reasonable. He was keeping his temper despite Caden's father's tone. "We had an argument, and I let my temper get ahead of me. I think you can appreciate that," his father said tightly. "But though my son thinks he can do everything on his own, he cannot. He needs help, especially with all the dragons here trying to stake their claim to him like that Ilarian creature." "He is not alone." It was Marban who spoke, which had Caden and Rose exchanging shocked glances. Marban and Valerius were working together. "We are all here to assist Caden in making the right choices." "Who are you?" his father snapped. "Oh yes, you're that gangster. You have criminals by your side, King Valerius? Criminals who seek to get their claws into my son?" Caden pinched the top of his nose. But though his father had meant to insult Marban, the wily old swarm shifter seemed completely unmoved by it. "Mr. Bryce, there is something you should know about being a shifter. It places each of us in a certain sphere. As a swarm shifter, my sphere was not so exalted. I made the best of it. But even though Caden has joined the highest of the high, he will need the wits I learned at the bottom." Rose bit her lower lip again. Her gaze was inward. What was she thinking? That she was in the lowest sphere? She wasn't. She was here with him, and she had every right to be. He reached over and touched her shoulder. She lifted her head and focused on him. She seemed to know what he was thinking. She smiled faintly. "I have some wits myself," his father said. "Oh, yes. Top of your class at Harvard Law School," Marban listed off. "You apprenticed with Justice Iolaire of the Second Circuit, who wrote several influential papers, and then you made partner at your firm." "Yes, I did." His father sounded less certain all of a sudden. "But I am betting that despite all of your accomplishments, that this is the most sure of yourself you've been in a long time. Perhaps this is the most respect you have had ever from your partners," Marban guessed, and Caden knew he guessed right. Marban always knows a person's weaknesses. "I have done good work," his father said, but weakly. "Of course you have. I didn't say you haven't. I spoke of certainty and respect," Marban chuckled. "Those two things are so rare when you were down in the bottom. I know this, and if you are honest with yourself, you know it too. So I speak to you as a fellow man whose talents and strengths have gone ignored until recently." "I have never ignored you, Marban," Valerius said tightly. "You are too kind to say so, my king," Marban answered. "But like you, Mr. Bryce, my usefulness was not apparent to some people until Caden joined with his spirit." "I am not here for myself," his father objected tersely. "I'm here for my son. All the dragons are coming here, and before they leave, I will have justice for Caden." "What does justice look like in your eyes, Mr. Bryant?" Valerius asked. "That Caden has his own territory, so he's dependent on no one," his father answered, and Caden grimaced. "Not this again." "The other dragons will not agree. It will cause war," Valerius told his father. His father was not deterred by this as he said, "If that is true, then will you agree to give him part of your kingdom, King Valerius?" I hope you enjoyed this week's chapter. Just a reminder that if you join Wraith Reign as a member, the membership is 15 to 20 episodes ahead of the free podcast. If you'd like to join and listen to all those extra podcasts, not to mention getting access to the other stories and manga on Wraith Reign, a link is down below.